listening to the Art Said podcast, episode 15, a conversation with Amanda Koonlaba. What matters? Welcome to the Art Said podcast, conversations through the perspective of the arts and education, hosted by educators and artists Shauna Longo and Edric DeBose. Okay, so we're going to dig right in with Amanda Koonlaba. Amanda, we are so excited to have you today on our podcast. I've known Amanda for many years. We've intersected, although, she's down south in Mississippi and Edric and I are up in New Jersey. Our lives have kind of intertwined in many different occasions in the arts world. But tell us a little bit about yourself, and then what was your first experience that you had that made you want to make art?
Okay, well, as you said, I'm Amanda Koonlaba. I am in Tupelo, Mississippi, which is the birthplace of Elvis Presley, and I taught visual art at the school Elvis attended, and everybody always finds that so interesting.
That is super interesting. I didn't even know that.
Yeah, it was really fun. We did a lot of stuff with Elvis, but we always had tourists coming from out of the country. They wanted to come see the school, and we were walking distance to his birthplace. So that was really cool. But I had been a general ed teacher before I moved to that school. And when I moved to that school, I went there to be the visual arts teacher. And my background had been in arts integration. So I was able to take all of that background to the visual arts classroom. And when I did that, I found myself really, surprised and happy. And I wanted to share what I was doing with other teachers and just the success that I was seeing with my students and across our school, because we were really trying to implement so much arts integration. And I started Party in the Art Room, and I labored over the name for that. And I finally said, it's a party because I just want to feel the joy, and this makes me feel the joy in teaching again. So started it as a blog, and I'm just still plugging away at it. And it's been over a decade now. But I think the first time I really felt like an artist was I was an itty bitty girl, and my mom took me to this thing called Art in the Park.
Okay.
And it was lots of booths. It was for kids. There were a lot of booths. Nothing was for sale. It was just come make art at the park. And there were a bunch of different booths, and you could make lots of different kinds of art. And the one that I remember the most, and when I think about it, man, I am back in that place. It's such a vivid,
I love those memories.
Yeah, it's a core memory for me. I mean, I can just see the people. I know exactly where we were standing in that park.
You remember what you were wearing?
I don't remember what I was wearing.
Okay, because there's that visual piece of the smells, that whole the five senses.
I don't remember what I was wearing, but I think it's because what I did was I made a t-shirt. Okay. We had to bring a t-shirt. And so I noticed a lot of the other kids had white, Hanes t-shirts. Mm-hmm. My mom, for some reason, had bought a one that was kind of this salmon orange color, kind of like the one I have on now. And we took some yarn and we dipped it in paint, and we made a t-shirt. And that's the piece of clothing I remember, because I wore that shirt until my mom had to take it away from me. I mean, I wore it out because I made it and didn't look like anybody else's. I wore it to school. We had to buy 3 or 4 different pairs of pants to match it. And I think for me that day, I saw art is not just I'm going to draw my horizon line with my crayon, and then I'm going to draw a square house with really straight parallel lines, and I'm going to put a sun in the corner, and then I'm going to color it in. I was oh, art can these are just a bunch of colors and lines everywhere. And I felt so good just making something that didn't have so many rules. And then the fact that I just could wear it, it was really, really important.
It was your creative expression that you literally wore on yourself to share with others, right? And it's taking that piece of you and then being able to express it and share it with the world in one simple project that they probably the people running it probably didn't even realize how deep you took it and how it touched your soul. And that's the power of the arts that we get, but a lot of people don't.
I think for young kids too, certainly for me, certainly for my daughter, it has to do with identity. because you start to understand that you can be this person, that you can sit inside this conversation and then share that information, that experience with other people. But it's really that there's something about the uniqueness of you, that like, this is me. And when you get to that, that's really kind of a core. It's a kind of a discovery for a kid, I think.
Yeah, and it was just such a piece of my childhood that it still informs how I live to this day.
And probably how you teach, right? Because
Yeah, for sure.
you're looking for that experience in your students, because you know that it's in there somewhere.
Yeah, and one thing I really want for my students or anybody that I engage with in the art form is for them to feel validated. And it is the end product is not the most important part. It's the part in between in the process that makes us feel good, teaches us something about ourselves or about others or about the world. And that's the part that matters. So I want everyone to have that experience. And it really, because that's how I teach art. It's not about the end product. I mean, it's nice when you have an end product, and we need end products,
Right.
Right.
but it's the end product to me is not the magical part. That's not where the magic is. It's in the process and the experience of it.
The end product is more like the archive of the experience and the process you went through, that reminder,
It's
like,
a
that you
memento.
take with you.
It's like a memento. It's the thing you
Yeah.
do or that you give to someone else, and it sustains you somehow. But it's still that moment. Document.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
So
that-
go ahead.
I think for most people that do not create, that's what it is. They tend to look at the products. If you're involved in the act of creation, though, you realize that that time where you're actually working on something, it's almost like there's this information or experience that's available to you in no other place. In this place, when you're making music or you're making art, that so I think one of the best compliments I ever had was a student said to me once. He said he liked my class because you could relax and work. And I thought that's interesting that you put relaxing and working together like that.
Yeah, it's like an oxymoron, and yet it really does symbolize what we do as arts educators. And that's why I think a lot of people don't understand, and they don't like. I was actually chatting with a teacher today who said to me, like, I really appreciate how you embrace the chaos in our room and encourage us to do more of that. And I'm like, wow, like the fact that that wasn't encouraged before, like that's the beauty. That, like, if I go in a room and everything is prim and proper and there's not a bit of chaos, something's wrong, in my opinion. Like something's off. Like it's too regimented. The kids aren't have that freedom and that ability to express themselves and be loose and feel comfortable.
Well, we teach teachers that they have to control the product at the end, and that the product is the important part, because you have to produce a product in a test score at the end of the year. You have to produce a product because they have to have a play that parents can come to. And that's the mindset of a lot of teachers, and it takes, some work to kind of bring yourself out of that. And again, it's not that they're pointless or bad or we're trying to avoid that. It's that the magic is in the process. And that's life. Like, the human experience is messy and chaotic.
Yeah, it is.
And like, if you want to be able to get through that and still thrive, you need to experience an art process and learn through that. And then that applies to everything else.
Exactly.
So, and I know what you mean about walking into a room and there's everything is just so controlled. That just does not mirror life. It does not mirror childhood at all.
No, it shouldn't. It shouldn't, right?
Right.
I think some people try to make it, and it shouldn't.
Yeah, and I'm telling you, things just become easier once you can surrender to that. Like, there's chaos, I'm going to embrace it, and everything is just so much easier.
Yep.
So that sounds like
it becomes easier.
That sounds like one of the things that you would do on the teacher end. Be aware that you have to embrace a certain level of chaos and disorder in order to get into the creative process. But how did you refine that, though? So in terms of your journey, having these experiences and then wanting to share them, how do you formalize a way of approaching teaching from those experiences and from that understanding?
Excuse me. It's really about reflecting.
Okay.
I think because what happens is you're in the moment and you're like, this is not what I thought was about to happen. Is this okay or not? And sometimes you can't completely change what's happening. Sometimes you have to kind of let the process play on out. And then at home at night, maybe you're not actively thinking about it, but it may come to you because it's in there and it's stewing around in your mind. Because in your reflective practitioner, that kind of happens naturally, but you can also be intentional about it. Sometimes, though, I think when you get past or when you get to a place as an educator where you can go, that is not what I thought was about to happen. Is it okay? Then you get to where in the moment you can start tweaking right on the fly. This is not going like I want it to, and it's not okay. I got to do something different. We're not going to get there if I don't do something different. And you can. Or this is not where I thought it was going, but you can like quickly identify, but this is better, and we're going to go with this. But it is a process. I mean, you don't walk out of college knowing how to do that. You don't walk in on your first day being able to do that. It's kind of you got to start reflecting, and then it starts becoming part of who you are, and you can just do it on the fly.
You have to build your kind of like teacher toolkit, right? Of like how to knowing when you need to pivot and trusting which way you have to pivot, embracing it, and sometimes like admitting it, right? Like, okay, this isn't going the way I thought it was going to. So let's go a different direction and let's roll with this creative process. And it's taking us, we hit a fork in the road and we're gonna veer left, and it's gonna be an awesome journey.
I think some of that too is about developing language, because if you start developing the language of education, and you are understanding like pedagogy, you have language where you can identify what's going on. You start to have that, I know what's happening here, but it needs to be this. And you become actively engaged in it in that way, as opposed to you're just like riding this wave out, hoping for the best.
Absolutely.
So I'm curious about what the compass is. How would you talk about the compass that allows you to know, okay, this is going somewhere I didn't think it was going? What's the compass at that point that helps you to figure out it's okay to continue with this, or I need to change something? What is it that you are seeing or are not seeing? What's that emotional thing that says, maybe, yeah, what is that?
Oh, that's a hard question. You asked
and that's why he asked it.
But I think so I may not have the complete answer in this moment, but it's going to give me something to think about. But I think it has something to do with engagement, because and the relationship you have with your students. You're listening to them and you're hearing what they're saying, or you're seeing what they're doing, and you know them, and you're like, you can almost like see growth happening right before your very eyes.
Yes.
And it is something about their engagement and the relationship you have with them. That is not my final answer, but that is the answer.
That's your answer right now in this moment. And I know what you're going to do. You're going to keep thinking about this. So folks, there'll be a blog post on Amanda's Party in the Art Room website in the future about this.
Well, I think that does answer it, because without engagement, I mean, I think, it's like there has to be something that's hitting deeper than just the physical activity.
Yeah, and either if they're engaged, like if you know what that looks like, because these people that you're in the room with,
right?
They might be slinging paint everywhere, but they're not actually doing anything, and you would know because you've seen them do that.
Yes.
Or they might be slinging paint everywhere and talking about and having aha moments, and that's a different kind of that's engagement is not a surface level thing. You can't just look from the outside looking in and know it's real. So that's why the relationship piece is there.
Yes.
And it almost is, there's that connection, because I'm going to help us. We've totally gone a little bit off track, which is totally, we love that. So it's all good. But I'm going to try to connect this back of, there is that, how does this fit with my curriculum, that might help us know, is this working or not working, right? Am I meeting my goals? So talk to us a little bit about your work, because I know you are a champion in education for ASCD. You have a huge Teachers Pay Teachers store where you make resources. You have the artful literacy centers, which I really want to get into, but I also know that we are getting to our limit of time. So give us a little bit about some aspect of that, now that kind of ties into that like curriculum piece
It
that can help
definitely
be a piece.
It definitely ties into my philosophy on curriculum is it has to be open-ended. People have to be doing something and they have to be engaged, and it cannot be surface level. They can't just be slinging paint. They have to be making the connections to themselves, to the world, to others, to text, to everything. It can't be a silo. So, but it has to be open-ended because they have to be able to make decisions. And I'm not talking, and I think I've said this to y'all another time, but it can't be like the decision. I'm not talking about the decision between answer A and answer B on a worksheet. That's
Right.
not a decision. I mean, it has to be a decision with consequences, and that you have to be able to justify. So if you are engaged in a learning process and you are using art and you are applying what you know to make decisions for an outcome, there's this process and you're trying to show what you know. You got to be able to justify that. You have to be able to, because if you can't justify it, there's a consequence to that. Like, or if you're not thoughtful and you make a big mark across something and you hate it, there was a consequence to that because you weren't being thoughtful. So it's open-ended, and you have to be able, because you have to be able to make the decisions, and there also has to be some room to make mistakes and correct mistakes and think about your mistakes.
Absolutely. In order to get to that position, you have to have foundational skills taught, and the students have to understand what they're learning and the reason behind what they're learning and its implications and the process. And that's like a bigger conversation, and getting teachers to think outside of the, okay, I have to teach these skills and I'm going to just go through and check the box and I'm going to assess it and on to the next thing, versus really layering and having a purpose to which we approach the journey of our students.
And maybe there's a worksheet and they do have to find the right answer, A or B.
Correct.
And then, well, what are they going to do with that then? They
Right.
can pick the right answer, but then what can they do with that? That's the open-ended part that is what curriculum is about for me.
Well, it sounds like the other piece of that too is one of my favorite questions is what's at stake here? What's really at stake here? Why does this actually matter? Why does this actually mean something? What's at stake?
Because we need to live in a world where human beings value themselves and value others and can think critically about what that means and have the autonomy to make decisions, but also have a sense of self-efficacy, which is the thing that I want for kids. And that's what I want for my own children and for every other human being, is to have a sense of self-efficacy. Like, I can do what I need to do to change my situation with what's within my power. And I have the ability to do that. And that's what's at stake. I don't want to live in a world where none of the other human beings are self-actualized. I want the person sitting next to me to also be self-actualized so that they can harmony, man. It's about harmony. I want there to be harmony.
Well, and I mean, if I can jump in and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's part of like coming out of the pandemic and where we are in life right now, that so many people are struggling with mental health, right? And teachers, students, and everybody. And I think self-efficacy is a piece of that.
It is. That's a big, that's a whole 30 minutes topic on its own.
I know we could do multiple episodes on this, and we may.
But it's like, I need to be the best I can be so that I can also be the best that I can for others that I can be. Like, it's and that's all connected, and that is what's at stake.
Yeah. So I mean, I think the way I understand this, for me as a young, when I think about young people, or myself as the 13, 14-year-old, it's like that realization that no, I can do the driving. I can actually choose and decide where I'm going. That's how I'm understanding that when you say self-efficacy.
Yeah. With what you have the power to control, that you can do something different.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Sense of agency. Yeah.
All right, well, oh my goodness, time just flew by, and I can't believe, right? I told you, like, it's gonna go so fast.
It went so fast. It was so much fun, though.
I know this was such an amazing conversation. We truly appreciate you being here, and you are, welcome back to kind of continue these conversations anytime you'd like. Everybody go to the description for the podcast. We're going to put a link in there to Amanda's website, partyintheartroom.com. Check her out on Teachers Pay Teachers, TPT, because I will tell you, I will give her the seal of she's got amazing resources to help guide you on your journey and they're all created out of her journey. So like they're authentic and they're just amazing. So I'm going to give her that little plug because she deserves it because her stuff is awesome.
That's sweet. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Thanks so much for being here with us today.
Pleasure to meet
And
you.
Edric, until lunch next time.
Okay, there it is.